All right, everybody. I am so excited today to welcome Emma Corbett to the show, the Jobseekers Playbook. And probably one of the guests that I'm most excited for. Emma is a phenomenal talent acquisition leader. She is currently at Entrata leading all talent acquisition for Entrata, which is a local Utah company, but has a global reach, which is really cool. But what you need to know about Emma's background is she has a lot of great experience. So she was actually a college recruiter back in the day for the colleges that she was a part of. She's been an agency recruiter. She's been at some big companies like Adobe and Entrata. In fact, Emma is also a Boomerang employee. And so maybe we'll ask you a little bit about that, Emma. What you've been at Entrata for quite a few years now, and you were at Entrata before. So what keeps you there and what keeps you excited about being at Entrata?
Awesome. Well, first of all, Jeremy, thank you for having me on the podcast. I am equally excited to be here. But I love getting that question, and ever since I came back to Entrata, it's probably the most commonly asked question that I get. So there's a lot of reasons that I choose to work at Entrata and a lot of things that I really love about it. But if I were to boil it down on like what brought me back to Entrata, there's really like three main things that stand out to me. So the first one is our product. The second one is the stability of Entrata and the organization and what we're building. And then the last thing would be our impact. And so I'll go into like each one of those, but our product, I just geek out over our product. I love what we're building. Entrata is a solution for property management companies all around the globe to run their businesses more efficiently and provide them opportunities to interact with their residents in the most meaningful way possible, because our software is doing the back end work for them. And so we've been in business since 2003. We've built all of our own products. Up until very recently, we completed our very first acquisition with a company called Rent Dynamics, which has been really great. And I would say like something that I love about Entrata and what we're building is we're really focused on this resident experience. So we've all been residents. Jeremy, you've probably lived in an apartment at some point in your life, whether you
Yeah.
were a student or moving in and out of a state, moving somewhere for a job. Like these are big moments in life.
Yeah.
And so really our goal is to make that as seamless as possible. And I think the mindset we kind of have is really happy residents make for really happy clients, and happy clients want more of Entrata and they want to continue to grow with us. So that's a little bit about our product and kind of what we're building and why I love that piece of it. But because of that, our product is really sticky. It's a must-have. If clients aren't on Entrata, they're on somebody like on some other software solution. And so we have really high retention, and high retention is good for our talent because it means that as we grow, we can forecast pretty far out. And so it's really helpful for us. And we've seen a lot of like that stability, especially over the last few years, which I know is important for people, especially right now. Now, of course, we can never guarantee anything, and I always like knock on wood as I say these things, but that's something that really stands out to me. And then, of course, the last thing is our impact. And so I kind of mentioned like our product supports people during life's biggest moments, but other areas that we really have leaned in that matters to me is like our social impact. And one of those things is we've partnered really closely with Utah Foster Care, kind of connecting this idea of homes. And over the past few years and our continued kind of partnership and investment with them, we've done a lot of different community events. One of my favorite stories is when we had a big client event, and it was kind of during COVID, that was going to be in person. Well, we ended up not being able to make it in person. And so what we ended up doing as a result is instead of having the client event, we invited families for Utah Foster Care in Utah to go have a vacation in San Diego where this event was being held. There's a video on it,
Wow.
so I can send that to you.
Yeah.
But it's things
Awesome.
like that that's just really authentic to Entrata and our culture. And of course, we would turn that into an opportunity for us to work better with our partners. So those are a couple of the things that really stand out to me. But really what I love about what I do is like there is freedom to act fast, fail fast, and work with really amazing people to do so. And that's what brings me back to Entrata, and that's what keeps me here every day.
I love that. Like you can definitely hear in your voice the passion of what you do, the product, the impact,
Yeah.
the opportunities, which is important for job seekers to kind of hear and understand. Like when job seekers are going through trying to find a job that they want to work for, the things that I heard you just say around stability, I think that's probably the number one thing that people are looking for right now is I want a company that is going to provide me stability. And
Yeah.
Entrata is something that is a company that can do that. So,
If there's,
yeah,
sorry, I do want to add just one more thing on that too, Jeremy, for job seekers.
yeah,
And it's one area I see people uh maybe flounder a little bit is they're looking for jobs and they start with the jobs instead of starting with the companies. And I think
yeah,
like I joked about how I geek out over our products, but like that's something that I always lead with if I'm looking for a new job is like, do I like what this company is doing and the products that they're building? And if I like that, then I'll back into now what opportunities do they have available? Who can I network with there? But I do think it's really important for job seekers, like work for a company you believe in, like look for companies that you're really interested in because you'll be more motivated and you'll have more passion to go find the job that you want. So I just want to like call that out. I think that's something I've always really prioritized in when I'm looking for roles is picking the companies that matter the most and then backing into the jobs that they have available.
I love that. I've worked for companies in the past. There's one company in particular that I can think of that it did a lot of good, but I wasn't really excited about the product. It was just kind of a it was kind of a basic, it was a helpful product, but it's kind of a boring
Mm-hmm.
product. And for me,
Yeah.
I want to work with something that's exciting and that, that I don't know, just has a little bit more to it. And where you start talking about the product that Entrata offers, it's like, gosh, that's really cool. Seems like something that would be a lot of fun to work with and super innovative and always on the cutting edge. So I think your
Yeah.
advice here is really important. Like really look at the company, look at the products that it's offering and say, can you see yourself working and doing that? Or is it going to be
Yeah.
something that's going to be a turnoff for you down the road that's going to disengage you?
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Cool. I love it. All right, Emma. So I've got like four rapid fire questions that I want to ask you that I really think will help our job seekers out there. And the first one is really just kind of high level, but where are job seekers really missing the mark today, in your opinion? You're seeing tons of job seekers, tons of candidates coming through, and you see really great ones, and you see average ones, and you see probably really poor ones. Like where are job seekers really missing the mark right now?
Oh, that is such a good question. It's kind of a loaded question, Jeremy. What the heck? No, there's this is an interesting question because I do think that job seekers missing the mark can kind of depend a little bit on the organization or even the job that they're applying for. If I were to boil it down to where, like, overarchingly, I see job seekers missing the mark, it's really just it's being specific, and I'm going to explain that a little bit better. So, I just use the example that when I look for a job, I like to look at a company and who would I want to work for. And then I'm backing into, okay, now what are the jobs there and how would I work into that? Versus, oh, I need to go look at open jobs. I'm going to scrub LinkedIn. I'm just going to like mass send out applications. I'm going to like hope for the best in what I'm looking for. Now, in option one, where I'm like looking at my company and then, or looking for my ideal company and then trying to find my ideal job. Now, my ideal job may or may not be open, but that is not going to deter me from trying to get a job there anyway. And so my next step in that process is, okay, who has my ideal job today? What does their team look like? And LinkedIn is a wonderful tool. Anybody can use it. It's free. And you can go on there and start to look for people that are in these companies at these roles. And I can tell you, I've reached out to so many people on LinkedIn, sending messages and connecting and asking, like, hey, can I buy you coffee just to pick your brain for like 10 minutes? I want to understand how you got into your role. What steps did you take? And this is not easy. This is time intensive. This is investing a little bit of money into a cup of coffee for someone so that
Sure.
they'll spend time with me. And I don't see a lot of people doing this, but it's strategic communication, right? Like I can't just mass in-mail people either and say, hi, will you talk to me? Will you spend time with me? Like I need to see how can they have value in talking to me too. And so this is where networking comes into play. And no, you don't have to know people in order to start networking with folks. This is a really easy way to approach it in the beginning. But I do want to be clear, you'll get way more rejections or ghosts or people not responding to you than the ones that will respond to you. So it
100%.
is time intensive. It does require your effort to connect with these folks. But we see as a talent professional and a talent leader at a tech company in Utah, referrals are one of the number one ways that we attract talent because typically great people know great people. And we want to make sure we take good care of our referrals when they're coming through the pipeline. And so not only does this help me understand the company and the role I might want better, but it also now gives me someone who can refer me to the job I want when it's open. So it's hard because I want to I relate, if you're looking for a job, you usually want a job right now, but a lot of times these things will pay off in the long run because you're going to get the job you want, or you're at least going to be a shoo-in for the job you really want. And, it may take a little bit of time, but I say this all the time, opportunities always become available. Things change, people leave, people's situations change, jobs open up, like it always happens. And so I think back to your question, where do I see job seekers missing the mark? It's I'm just going to submit a bunch of applications and hope I can get there versus I'm going to strategically try to get my foot in the door with this organization.
Yeah, 100%. I think one of the biggest challenges I'm seeing with job seekers right now is they're doing the exact opposite of what you just suggested they do is this mass, we're going to send out 1 million applications and we're going to hope that it's going to happen. And sometimes I even see talent acquisition people telling people it's all a numbers game. You just got to get as much out as possible. And it's like, oh, I don't think that's the
Is
right thing to
it?
do. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. It's like you're talking about being strategic with the company that you look at that you're going to want to work for. You're being strategic
Yeah.
about how you're going to communicate. You're trying to create these personal relationships with people. Like that's extremely more strategic than just sending out a bunch of stuff. And so I think that's bad advice in terms of just go out and spray and pray that you're going to get, you're going to get something. So
Totally. Well, and I've seen too, I've picked up a couple searches recently and I've done phone screens. I'm on the phones like frequently with candidates. And I get on the phone sometimes with people and I'm like, hey, excited to talk to you. Going to tell you about Entrata in this role. Want to learn more about you, see if it's, mutually a good fit. People are like, yeah, you're like the seventh phone screen I've had today. Like I'm talking to a lot of people. I've been out of work. And I'm like, don't lead with that.
oh,
Like there's a
shoot.
better way to position yourself so that I believe that you're my ideal candidate and that you're asking the right questions and you're specific and measurable with your answers. And so there's a lot of ways I think just like professionally to show up well that way too. And these are senior level roles, like these aren't just, and most times they're not entry level roles. And so I do think, just be thoughtful. Just imagine every phone call you have is like, you are gainfully employed. You don't necessarily need this job. You have a lot to offer. And don't forget that, like, have confidence in what you have to offer because it's a lot. I know it. Like, the talent we have out in the market right now, there's a lot to offer out there. And so I do encourage people, have that confidence when you jump in those calls.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So Emma, you're saying something that kind of seems like it's playing out a little bit too around people that maybe aren't showing up the best that they could and maybe even have a little bit of an ego coming into it like, gosh, I just should get this job. I deserve this job. I don't know if this is worth my time or whatever. Like
Mhm.
how can we help job seekers understand that they've got to figure out how to kind of ditch the ego and show up for the company and why that's important.
Yes. Oh man. So we see this in interviews a lot. I've heard it in phone screens. And I just said, so I'm happy that you kind of like took my answer and went there, but there's a difference between being confident and then overconfidence slash and or ego. And I think like when we see it show up in interviews, it's candidates that are coming in kind of assuming they have the job. And it's not that you don't have the qualifications to get the job, but it's almost like they're lacking a core competency of like curiosity
Yeah.
and openness to feedback and learning. And that is very important. In fact, one of the biggest skills gaps in America right now is soft skills. And can somebody be coachable? Can we talk to them? Can they carry a conversation in an effective way? Can they make you feel important just like we want to make you feel important? And I think that that is something that is a really quick turnoff for interviewers at Entrata, especially probably at every company. But if somebody comes in with that type of ego and feeling like they're not going to be coachable, Entrata is a rapidly growing company right now. And there's a lot of change that we experience. And so it's not just coachability and change, but I would say that kind of comes off as like you may not be able to change and grow with us. Like as we
Right.
pivot, as
That's right.
we move in new directions, we need to know that like you're on this train with us and that you can work with us and not dig your heels in the ground and kind of work against. And so I think as a job seeker, we're thinking when you're being interviewed, people are assessing your behavior beyond just doing the job. It's your future ability to do this job as well. And so it has never been a bad thing to come off in an interview as open to feedback and being coachable and being curious to know more about the role, but also making sure you're well prepared to talk about the things you're good at. And guys, it is okay to sit in an interview and say, actually don't have the answer to that question. Can you ask it differently? Or I don't have the answer to that question, or I don't have exact experience there, but how I would approach it is in X, Y, and Z way. And so being open to that, I just think is really important. And if you don't know if you have what Jeremy and I are, what we're calling kind of like ego in an interview or coming off as uncoachable, sit down with somebody and do a mock interview and ask them for feedback. It is very different if Jeremy, let's say I'm doing a mock interview with you. If I feel like I have feedback for you and you haven't asked for it, and I'm like, well, can I tell you something I think you could do better? I don't know how you're gonna respond to that.
Right.
You might be like, I don't want to hear it. But Jeremy, if you come to me and you're like, Emma, I want to be better at interviewing. Can you give me some feedback and can we do a mock interview? I'm going to be ready to give you all my notes and make sure that you have everything you need. And so I think that's a really, really important and could be a very impactful tool and could be a free tool for you to use just to get some feedback on just generally how you're coming off in an interview.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Thanks for sharing that, because I think that's one of the challenges that a lot of people face, and just being willing to listen to the feedback and listen to the coaching and be open to it. And you don't
Yeah.
have to come into an interview and you don't have to know everything, and that's okay. Like showing a little bit of humility and that you're willing to seek to understand, it goes a long, long way versus I know everything, I'm the smartest, I'm the most capable. Like that's
Yeah.
a bit harsh. You've got to have a little bit of self-awareness and really kind of focus in on those soft skills. So
And Jeremy, you've managed a lot of teams before. Like, where have you seen this show up in interviews? Or like how have you mitigated this even on your teams?
yeah, it's a good question. Like I mean, I think about leading a team just in general. So maybe shifting from interviews to just leading a team, and
Yeah.
think about the people on my team that go the farthest. They're the ones that are willing to have a really good feedback session and be willing to just listen, and versus constantly trying to come back and say, well, here's why I did this or here's why I did that. It's like, oh, you don't have to get defensive. You actually don't need to come in and say why you did something. It's more about just being willing to take a step back and just listen and say, oh, okay, thank you. Like I appreciate that. I'm trying to seek to understand and do better. Because the ones that dig their heels in and are that have that defensive mentality, they're the ones that you also tend to see not changing and adapting and evolving. And like you said,
Mm.
Entrata is moving so fast, and you've got to be willing to adapt and come along the journey in a different way. And if you're so stuck in a certain way, you're not going to be
Yeah.
successful in that environment. So that's kind of what I see on teams. But then it relates to the interview process as well. People that are just not um, willing to kind of have that ability to shift and change and to take feedback.
Yeah. And I think just for the job seekers listening, where I'm referencing this is in interviews. Most times, very common interview question you'll be asked is, tell me about a time that you maybe failed or something didn't go your way. Give me the situation, what happened, what was the task that you took, or what was the task, what was your action that you took, and then what were the results? And then really, what did you learn from that is usually what I like to ask. And it's very clear the people that are like taking feedback, learning, being curious by how they answer that question. And so I think, I don't know if you have other questions in mind that people usually ask, but like nail down your answers to the commonly asked questions. And that's a really good one that will showcase to interviewers your coachability.
What's coming to my mind is like this picture of Dwight Schrute from The Office being asked, like, when have you failed? And seeing him say something like, I've never failed. I am so perfect. I do everything right. Like that's what job seekers want to kind of avoid. And you're looking for that, as an interviewer, you're actually
Yeah.
looking for that failure to see, okay, like what did they learn from it? What did they take
Mm-hmm.
away, and how did they adjust after that? Because nobody's perfect. You're pretty close.
Yeah.
You're like right there, Emma, on that perfect scale. But most people are not at that level, and it's okay. It's okay to kind of show like, where you're not good at something, but it's like, are they willing to learn? Are they willing to
Yes.
figure something out in a different way? Can they do it differently than how they do it? So
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
100%.
Okay. Let's shift gears to another question. Um, Something that you've probably seen a lot where candidates have been through a variety of rounds of interviews, and maybe they make it to even to the final round of interviews, but they're not ultimately landing the job. What are some of the common reasons you see for that, and how might a job seeker mitigate that to try to ultimately get the job at the end of the day?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, Such a good question. So there's a few things that are coming to mind right now. When it comes to candidates that are making it to final rounds. And the first thing I want to say is a lot of times it will just come down to experience. And if there's somebody that just has a bit more, they have an edge on having specific experience. But two other things that come to mind is where I see them go right and where I see them go wrong. And where I see them go wrong is sometimes candidates will get to final stage interviews and they'll ask questions that really they should be talking to the recruiter about, or they'll kind of just come off that like they have the job because they're like, oh, I've made it to final rounds, like I've got this in the bag. And so it's almost like they stopped trying as hard as they did in the first few rounds.
Interesting. Okay.
And so where I see people go right and where they are trying is they're continuing to reassure that they're learning from their other interviews and they're applying what they've learned into their future interviews. And what I mean by that is you may learn in your first 2 rounds of interviews like consistent themes that these managers really care about, and you'll start to clue into like, oh, I hear the problems they're trying to solve, I get that now. And so then in the next couple rounds or in a final round of interview, you're making sure that your answers are going back to solving the problems you learned from in the first few rounds.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think of an example of like where I've seen this, but I just think like making sure that you're listening and you're adapting and understanding what a business is trying to solve, and you're reassuring, hey, either I have experience solving these problems and let me infuse those into my answers in the final round of interviews, or if you don't have that exact experience, take that into what you're researching before you go into your final round interviews. Like if somebody, like we have organizational changes we're going to need to make. Well, maybe you've never made an org change before, or you've never had to like, build an org. Okay, well, in my final round of interviews, I might want to do some research on effective organizational health and what that should look like. And I'm going to make sure I'm infusing those into my answers. And so just ensuring that you're like always keeping a really strong pulse and that you're remaining really curious and asking questions that are going to help you understand the role better, understand the problems the business is trying to solve. Because at the end of the day, the reason a company is hiring is because there is a gap and they need a person that can come in and solve it really effectively and really efficiently. And so ensure that you're asking those important questions in the beginning to understand those problems. So by the time you get to a final, you're just, you're making sure that you have answered any questions they could have about how you're going to help them solve those problems.
So maybe what you're talking about too is kind of people that are really good conversationalists are the people that are active listeners versus
Mm-hmm.
trying to think about, well, what am I going to say next on this interview? And you're so focused on what am I going to say next that you're missing out on the clues that you were talking about that are along the way. That's like, oh, their biggest problem is this. And one of the biggest challenges is that. And I need to figure out like what those are and how do I speak to those versus being so worried about what I want to say. Or so it's almost shifting away from what you want to listening to what they're saying and what they need, and then meeting that in the conversation
Yes.
the way.
Yes. So you think about it on like a grid, right? Like I'm over here as the job seeker wanting the job, and this person's over here as the hiring manager hiring for the job. Well, they have all their expectations of what they need, and you have all of your talent and experience and skills that you can provide. And you need to find where you guys meet in the middle.
Yeah.
And I think that you hit on a really important point, which is active listening. But I want to also just mention to our job seekers, because active listening is hard when you're really nervous in an interview.
Yeah.
Because you're like, you are thinking, what am I going to say next? Okay, I practiced these. Oh, I know this question was coming. I'm locked and loaded with the right answer. Like all of those things are great, but you have to actively listen to make sure you're catering that answer that you prepared to be relevant to this person and this opportunity that you're being considered for. And so I also just want to mention the best way to mitigate this, and I am a big fan of this anytime I have a presentation, if I'm giving a training, practice a million times ahead of time, because the more you practice, the less intimidated you are to try to like remember that thing that you wrote down, or
Yeah.
whatever it is. Like practice your answers, practice how you say it. I do this really dorky thing where I set up my phone and I record myself giving presentations. And then sometimes I make my nieces and nephews listen to me give presentations, because if I can keep a 12-year-old engaged, I can keep an adult engaged. So I think like there are ways that you can like really practice ahead of time on your own with other people. There's a new tool, I'm forgetting the name of it. We can maybe drop it in like a comment or something, but Google just released it. It's free. You record yourself and it just writes back everything you said and kind of comments on where you're redundant. And I mean, it's not a perfect art, but another free tool that you can use to try
Yeah.
to help. So all of those things will make you show up better in an interview, and unlock you to actually practice active listening and cater your answers to, the specific person you're talking to.
And maybe as a added tip to what you're saying is you can look at either the job description and look at the competencies that they're
Mhm.
requiring for the job, or ask your recruiter in advance, like, hey, what is this interviewer gonna touch on? Like, what are the things that they care about the most? And your recruiter wants to set you up for success, wants you to be prepared, wants you to feel comfortable.
Yeah.
But then you take those things and do exactly what Emma said. Practice those in the mirror, practice those, record yourself, get somebody that you can, talk to and do the presentation with. Like those are the things that are going to make you feel super confident going in. And if it's relevant to the job, that'll be even better. So
Mhm. And the tool is called Interview Warmup by Google.
I love
Free
it.
tool, give it a shot. But yeah, I do think I just echo all of those things you just said.
Cool. Okay. So let's say we're thinking about the most successful job seekers, the people that are landing the jobs. Like, what are they doing? What is like the top thing that you feel like they're doing that helps get them over the top to get this job?
Most successful job seekers, well, first of all, they're doing pretty much all of the things we've been talking about in
Yeah,
our conversation today,
sure.
right? They're networking really well with people. They're being specific and targeted in their search. They're not just like posting a lot out there. I know this can feel a bit vulnerable, but if you post on LinkedIn that you're open to work and you're specific about the kind of work you're looking for, like allow your network to support you and help you. Like I know yeah, like I said, that can feel a bit vulnerable, but it's helpful, and you do kind of have to drop down some of the walls that you might have when you are searching for a job, and being open to letting your community help you. And just overarchingly, like they're showing up, like they're practicing for their interviews, they are practicing active listening. From a talent partner perspective, since I've been running a couple of searches recently, I've also noticed that really great talent is staying engaged. They're appreciative after interviews. They're, thanking their interviewers for their time. They're thanking me for their time. And they're also reaching out to me for assistance. Now, my job when I'm talent partnering is I want my candidates to put their best foot forward. That is why we're here. I
Yes.
mean, we can't give you the answers. We can't give you the questions they're going to ask you, but we can make sure that you're well prepared so that you're not so nervous going in and you can have more of a conversation and practice your active listening. Um, I've noticed people lean into me. Some will say, "Hey, Emma, can you hop on a 5-minute call before my interview? Like, I just want to make sure I clearly understand who I'm meeting with. And if you can give me any context about what this interview will be about, as opposed to the rest of the interviews, that'd be really helpful." And so that's another thing that I think has just made some of those more in tune job seekers stand out is they're leveraging their resources, they're being really curious, they're asking for, do you have content about Entrata that I can't find on the website, or anything that would be beneficial for me to know. So they're asking me a lot of questions too. And a lot of job seekers may not know this, but your talent partner is talking to your manager, the potential manager, all of the time. If we're having a really negative experience with a candidate, we're probably telling the manager about it. If we're having a really positive experience with a candidate, we're probably telling the hiring manager about it. So I do think, like, don't forget that every interaction you're having with an organization is it's making an impression in one way or another. And so those are a couple things that I think just stand out. I have to say it because I'm in talent as a talent professional. But other things I do think, spending good time on your LinkedIn profile, making sure you're representing the way you want to. You've got an updated photo, you have all of your information articulated well about what you've completed and what you've accomplished. And one thing I think that really puts an edge on some candidates compared to others is they're using data to explain what they've accomplished. And they're leaning into, here's my achievements and here's my impact. We talk about this a lot at Entrata, actually, is like, your achievements are great, but if there's no impact associated with them, then like we don't know why they matter. And
That's right.
so candidates will come in with all of their achievements and cool, but like, what did that do for your company? How did that change? Did it save money? Did it save time? Did it, change the trajectory of your organization and where you were going? And so I think that last part is maybe one of the biggest things that puts candidates ahead. Managers and interviewers love that. It's really easy for them to digest. And it helps us understand really like your potential and what you could add to our organization.
Yeah, I love that. Not all achievement is created equal, right? So I
Mm.
was talking to a job seeker yesterday, and I was just looking at their LinkedIn profile. and the different companies that they worked for, and then they listed different skills that they had. But there was nothing within their LinkedIn profile that told me what they did. Like, what did you achieve and by how much? Like, how much revenue did that drive? Or what was the experience that that drove? Or, how much waste did you eliminate? Like, those are all things that should be relevant for any job seeker in any role. They should be able to provide results of what they did and how they made things better. You could do a ton of work, but it not be meaningful at all. So you got to figure out how you're able to quantify it and how you're able to speak to it. So I
Yeah, that's exactly right. And if you're applying for a job, like especially right now, you might be applying for a job that's in a little bit of a different arena than where you had been working, but it's cross-functional in some way. And like past decision making is the best predictor of like future success. And so that's really why we interview, and what we interview for is to understand your past decision making patterns and what you accomplished and how you did that. And that helps us kind of see those cross-functional skills and map them into a new role. But if you can't articulate that well, then the interviewers probably aren't going to do that for you. So I like really want to hit home on that piece, because it can make the difference between you getting the job or not, is really kind of, articulating that well.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, one of the last questions that I want to ask you, and you alluded to this a little bit, but what can job seekers invest either their time or their money into to help position them in the best way possible? One of the things you mentioned just a little bit ago was even just having a new headshot, and having a LinkedIn profile that's optimized for what you're trying to do. What else would you recommend in terms of investing somebody's time or money? Like, it really should be an investment that they put in. It's not just, hey, I'm going to just go apply to roles. There's things that you can actually do to help position
Mhm.
yourself much better.
Yeah. And it's funny, this is Emma's opinion. A lot of these end up being opinions. I should have put that PSA at the beginning, but one of the number one things I've had people in my network come to me and ask about investing in is writing their resume. And resumes are very important, but the way you should look at a resume is it's just your foot in the door to get an interview. Like, the purpose of a resume is for you to get your foot in and have that interview. Now, they should be well written. You should make sure there's no grammatical errors. ChatGPT is magical for all of these things. And so you really have a leg up that way. But if I were a job seeker in the market today, I wouldn't necessarily pay for somebody else to write my resume. I would be paying for either somebody to help me optimize my LinkedIn, because that is where all recruiters are going. They're looking at your profiles on LinkedIn. If they see that you're engaged in the LinkedIn and like maybe posting on LinkedIn, engaged in content that's relevant to your career path, it's optimized with specific details of your achievements and the impact. You have a good headshot photo that is you, like all of those things. I would pay for that for sure. So I think that's one area I'd invest. And then the other area I'd invest is potentially, if I didn't have someone in my network that I could do mock interviews with, I might invest in a professional to help me with that, because people can get interviews. Like, I don't know, when you get an interview, it's really important you show up well for those. Like, it's you, and you're literally investing in yourself by paying for somebody to give you really good feedback there. And so I think sometimes that can be free. You might have people in your network. You can always just start with someone, like if you know someone who's a leader, I'm sure they've done a lot of interviews before. You can start there. It doesn't have to be a talent professional, but if I were investing, it would be one of those two areas for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's important. Like, you've got to figure out how you want to, this is your future. So you've got
Yeah.
to put some investment in there. And some of it is time to prepare yourself and get yourself ready. And some of it might be a little bit of money to help you get further along the journey. And I was thinking about this the other day about just career coaching and people that could get career coaching, whether it's help with interviews or resumes or applying or job search. Like, there's
Mm-hmm.
things that you can focus on. But if you could get a job 3 months faster, 2 months faster, a month faster, a few weeks faster? What does that mean?
Mhm.
Like some people have been on the job search for longer than that. And if you can shorten that gap up, is it worth the investment to get the help that maybe you're not seeing? I think a lot of people think that they are phenomenal interviewers. Like, I can interview so well. I'm so good at this. I've done this so many times. And the reality is, like, we're only so self-aware of who we are, how we act, how we
Yeah.
and when you can have somebody, whether it's a friend or whether it's a professional, that can come in and say, hey, but did you think about this, this, and this? Oh, I didn't realize I was doing that. Well, yeah,
Mhm.
you adjust this will help you significantly. So I think there are some things that can make a massive difference for people.
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I'm just laughing because literally everybody thinks they're the best interviewers at like, and everyone thinks they're the best interviewees. Like,
Yeah.
it's such a blind spot for people, and I've been guilty of it before. And like, it's just so common, and it is. And again, it's a very vulnerable area to sit down with someone and say, will you give me feedback? And I'm about to answer a bunch of questions and hope that I don't sound dumb. Like, I get it. Like, I just want to like say that again. I get it. It's vulnerable. It feels like very scary sometimes, but it will pay off. I promise you, it will pay off, even if it's just little tweaks. Like, you sometimes don't realize the little like ticks that you might have in an interview, or maybe you're looking around and someone's like, hey, just focus on the camera, and like that will make the difference of you landing the next job. Like, there's so many things that just an outside perspective can give you insight on, and you don't have to pay for that. Like, that's just a friend that will sit down and listen to you, and ask you a couple of questions. And so, like, lean into those things. Like I said, you kind of have to drop some walls and ask for help in those areas.
Yeah, no, thanks for that perspective. So I
Yeah.
know Entrata is hiring a ton coming up. Tell us a little bit about the exciting roles that are coming up, and what people should look forward to.
Yeah, thank you for asking that. So Entrata is going to be hiring heading into next year. We've got a few key teams that we're looking to grow. The first one is our application security team. So we've got a big push for security hiring in our engineering org. Sales, we've got regional vice presidents all across the country that we're going to be looking for, and potentially some BDRs locally. And then just some other teams, product management. We're potentially looking at growing a bit, and then we have some consulting and tech support and a few other like services type roles. So we'll have those available as they come, but you can find them all on entrata.com/careers. And if you ever have questions, I strongly encourage everyone to engage with Entrata on LinkedIn. Just go give us a follow. We post a lot about what we're recruiting for and what we're up to. So yeah, would invite everybody to do that. But Jeremy, thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, this has been awesome. And usually, Emma, what I typically like cap off these shows with is asking the person that's on the podcast with me, like, what has been their secret sauce of, moving through their career, etc. But what I'd actually like to spin this just a little bit different, because you and I have worked together in a lot of different ways, and you've got such superpowers that if everybody could have a little bit of infusion of Emma into them, they would be super, super successful. But the reason I say that is your passion and your energy is literally just off the charts. Anybody that works with you knows that about you, and they feed off of it because it's so electric, I guess. And you're really good at that. You're a fantastic communicator, you're a fantastic listener, and you're taking all these things and it's just helping you be super successful. Like, I could probably go on and on and on a list of all the things that you're good at, but what else would you just tell our listeners to think about as they're building their career, as they're working with other people? What is it that you've done that's just really helped you be successful?
Um, First of all, thank you. Those are all very kind things to say. If I were to add anything else and things that I think have helped me be really successful, it's I mean, and kind of adding on that, but like, be a great partner internally. Like, I think that so much of my success has come from building strong rapport and relationships with people that I need to work with every day, and making sure that I do bring my energy to all of those meetings and brainstorms, and understanding, what do we need to accomplish and how can I help be part of that solution. I'm always thinking about like what are the biggest problems and how can I be part of the solution? How can I make an impact on that? And sometimes it's not very clear how I am going to make an impact on some big, problems we're trying to solve or things we're trying to change at Entrata. But if I try hard enough, I always find a way. And so I think that that is the biggest thing that has helped me find success, is make sure that I'm focusing on solving the right problems and that I'm finding how I can make that impact in my organization. Because there's always a way. We are all part of it. So yeah, I think that's been it.
I love that. I wonder if, like, as job seekers are getting coaching advice about their interview process, maybe the one question that they could ask the person that's helping them is, "Hey, how did I show up from an energy perspective? What did that look like for you?" Um,
Yeah.
because I think that is a major make or break. If you've got two candidates that are fairly equal in skills and capabilities, but one of them has a significant amount more energy, and you talked about gratitude earlier, and appreciation and respect, those type of things. If you have some of
Mhm.
those, that's gonna tip the scale for you, because people want to work with other people that are energetic and excited
Yes.
and motivated and happy, versus somebody that's like, oh hey, like, there's definitely something there. And granted, that doesn't come naturally to everybody. You and I might have, a higher levels of energy than other people might have. But if you don't have a higher level of energy, it's being self-aware of that and saying, what could I do to just energize a little bit further? Like, how can I do that? How do even like putting a smile on my face as I'm having the conversation,
Yeah.
like, that makes a big difference. And that might sound hokey, but I really truly believe that the people that are more successful have higher levels of energy, have smiles on their face, are happy, are finding the positive in life. Those are the people that end up propelling further. The people that are negative and dark and dreary and about how they approach,
Yeah.
it's kind of like, well, you're kind of just digging your grave. So I don't know. That's just my
Yes.
perspective.
Well, I would just add to that too. Like, you're so spot on. If I'm sitting in an interview with someone that's really low energy and just kind of like dragging on, it's like, guys, like, where's the life? Like, I think about meetings I really like going to with certain people because they bring the energy,
Yes.
they bring the passion. And like, I feed off of that and they feed off of me. And it's like, that's who you want on your team. Those are the people you want to be sitting in those brainstorm meetings with, like, how are we going to solve this giant problem that's ahead of us? But I know I can do it with these people that are equally invested. And
Yeah.
so for the job seekers out there, if you need to like go total Tony Robbins, start jumping on a trampoline right before your interview, if you just need to like jump around, put a smile on your face, like, that is contagious. People feel your energy, whether it's really positive or really negative, unfortunately. And I just think like you're so spot on. We may have like above average energy levels most of the time. But I do think that that is really, it's contagious and people want to work with that. They want to work with people that are energized and ready to go after the same problems, and that they are. So yes, I love that. And thank you for capping that off.
Yeah. Well, Emma, thanks for coming on to the show. I'm sure we're gonna have you back again, because you're just a cornucopia of knowledge. So excited to chat with you today. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, Jeremy.